name is Timo Sullivan. I work with Ryan Baroy in his wonderful research lab at Hilo. John asked me to tell you folks a little bit about my background, where I came from. This is the house I grew up in. It's in beautiful South Kona. I'm a real person. I'm zooming out because we make maps here in our lab. But there's our beautiful island of Hawaii. I think all you kids are over here on the east side, but I'm from Kona. I grew up there on a coffee farm. My mother was a preschool teacher. My dad fished opelu. I hope you kids still know what opelu is. It's a small little fish the Hawaiians used to love to eat. I went to Kona. After that, I went to HBA for a little bit. I was fortunate enough. And then I got my undergrad in New York City in literature. And then I came back to Hawaii and got my master's at Hilo. And Ryan actually was one of my teachers. So I had my master's in the conservation biology and tropical environmental science here in Hilo. And it changed my life. And I really think that they could change your kids' lives too. But anyway, get to the fun part now. Let's get looking at some more stuff we do. So yes, we are called the SDAV lab. SDAV stands for Spatial Data Analysis and Visualization. That's a bunch of fancy words for saying that we make maps and then we look at the maps. It's that simple. If you ever looked at your Google Maps, for instance, you have used a map to analyze things. And we do the exact same thing here at Hilo. So what can you do? Well, what do we study? We actually use UAS, or small unmanned aerial systems, to study a lot of things, to make our maps. Basically drones. I imagine you kids at your lab at school there have probably flown drones before. They're getting pretty common technology. At least maybe your friends or family might have one. And that's what we do here at the lab. We do a lot of things, but one of the main things we do is use drones. So I figured I'd show you this stuff that's pretty interesting. So what can we study with drones? Does anyone want to try and yell out different ideas for what we could study with drones?
What do you guys think?
All right, well, I can tell you some things then. Let's go ahead and try.
Yeah, Rochelle said maybe you could study the forests. What would you look at, Rochelle? Yeah, since you could have a better view of everything that's going on. Oh, and you can unmute too, Rochelle, if you want to, because then you'll have your mic there next time. But yeah.
Hard to reach areas.
Oh, get to hard to reach areas, Emily says. Yeah, places you couldn't hike to. Yeah.
Yeah, those are really good points. Drones help us get places that we can't go on. Either we can't go at all because we can't get there, or it'd be very unsafe for us to go. The forest health one that Michelle mentioned is a great point. Actually, we'll get to that later. So some good guesses there. I think one you maybe didn't think to guess at first is volcanoes. Do you guys remember the Leilani eruptions that happened a few years ago? We actually did a lot of studying for that with our technology. The county contracted our lab and asked us to help us basically see what's going on, because clearly it's a volcano. It's very dangerous. But drones can kind of supply us the ability to go check it out. So here's a video. It's somewhat long, but you can get back and relax and watch this with me. This is a video I made kind of documenting what happened at Leilani and how we were involved in our lab. So you can see this is a video of the actual flow during the Leilani eruptions. And this is taken from a drone. So there's a drone up in the air, and you can see there's that fissure line, for instance. And imagine you couldn't do this as a human being. It'd be far too dangerous for you. Maybe even a helicopter couldn't. So again, here's the beginning of the video. Here's our lab. And if you guys recall, back in April 6, 2018, there was some earthquakes and such, and the caldera started kind of steaming and erupting. And that was the sign that something might be happening over Leilani, lava-wise. And there was a lot of earthquakes that happened that week leading up to it. You can see all these earthquakes here. And then all of a sudden, the ground started fissuring in Leilani itself. I don't know if you guys remember that, but May 1st started having huge cracks forming. It's pretty incredible. And this was all in the news back in 2018. And there it is. There's the actual steam coming out. So you can imagine that steam might not be, healthy to humans being there. I don't know if you guys remember, but back then you actually had to wear gas masks walking around the neighborhood. So there's a great example of being a dangerous area that humans shouldn't go, but maybe the drones can. And you can see that that night of May 4th, the fissure started to emerge there, actual lava coming out of the ground. Incredible. And that's when the civil defense contacted Ryan Perot. He's right there, that man in the glasses, in the Aloha shirt. And they said, hey, what can you guys do for us? How can you use your drone technology to help us understand what's going on? So this is the video from the very first flight we did during the Leilani eruptions for our drone. And you can see we're just checking it out. We put the drone in the air. We're actually just flying it around and getting one of the first aerial views of what's happening during this eruption. It's pretty incredible. Here's the drone kind of panning around. This is kind of sped up time here. We can see there's emergence there. And so what you're seeing now on the screen, guys, is a thermal camera. So the lighter colors, that's hotter, and the more purple colors is colder. So this is a great tool because we actually can see what's going on with the heat. That kind of circular pool in the bottom left there, that didn't look very hot, right, for the naked eye. But to the thermal camera, you can see it's actually really, really hot. So this thermal camera is a really cool technology because we actually can see what's happening almost underground. You can see here that there's some lava moving under that road that we couldn't see with our naked eye. With a normal camera, like your phone camera, couldn't see that. But with this thermal camera, we actually can see the heat coming through the ground itself, which is pretty incredible. We'll see an example of that soon. But again, this is the first flight we did, and with this technology and imagery, we're able to kind of tell civil defense, hey, here's where the really hot spots are. Here's where, like, you know, this road might be safe, this road might not be safe, that kind of idea. Here's a really amazing example of this. Do you guys see that car driving over the lava? That looks crazy, doesn't it? What's happening there is the car actually didn't see that lava is going under the road. So that car never saw the lava. But our drone with the thermal camera could see it. And the next day, we're flying every single few hours. It's just trying to keep up with the flow here. So you can see that initial kind of line of fissures is kind of turned into one giant caldera. Yeah, it was terrifying, Blair. And here's more of that thermal camera. It's really beautiful imagery as well. You can see kind of all the heat sources where, like, the top of the lava might be cooling or scaling over, where it might be still a fresh, hot flow, that kind of idea. So potentially you could even see like things like lava tubes with this technology, because you could see the heat would coming through the ground. And you can see here's a map that we made here, kind of showing the progression of the lava flow over time. As the colors change, you can see that's actually the dates changing. And so you can see where the initial outbreak was, followed by the first kind of off flow, the second off flow, and eventually when it hit the ocean there. And you know, we kind of modeled this. We were able to actually estimate where the lava might go based off of watershed things. Basically, lava kind of acts like water in a lot of ways. It just wants to flow downhill, the path of descent, the least resistance kind of. So with that information of where the lava is and a good map of how the ground changes, you actually can estimate where the lava might be going. And you can see that that's kind of really important information because you can warn people ahead of time. Hey, folks, this lava is coming for you. Here's a really cool example. So some people actually want to study how lava flows itself. How does lava move? And so we actually flew 4 drones at the exact same time at different locations on the flow to kind of watch how that lava moves over time. So what you're seeing here is actually seeing that a river of magma kind of coming down the coast there. And if you know how big objects are, for instance, you can see there's a house right here. If you know how big that house is, you can then estimate how quickly this lava is moving objects, and from there kind of understand maybe how much magma is moving at a certain rate. Here's the cool thing. So here's us overlaying that thermal camera with a RGB, or this naked eye camera. And this is how a pu'u forms. You guys know what pu'us are? It's like pu'u kalui, pu'u mana'o, that kind of idea. This is an actual pu'u being formed, a cinder cone. You can see there's a little tiny house there on the left, just showing how big it is. And you can see we actually collected tons and tons of data from this flight, or from this flow, that is. And we're still analyzing it to this day. And so we can estimate things, right? So because of the information we gather, the next time an eruption happens, we can be better prepared. So here's a map, for instance, of how the fissures erupted. This is the first fissure number 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6. With this data, we can kind of try to estimate in the future how the lava might flow, and then try and protect both people and communities. Hey, there's some earthquakes happening here. Watch out. This might lead to lava. This is where the lava might go. So when you guys mentioned that, the drone can go places that humans can't because it's too dangerous, here's a great example of that, right? Cool. So we can study volcanoes with SDUAS. What else can we study? We can study deer. So this is a great example. If you go over to Maui here, I'm going to show you Google Earth a lot, guys, because we are a map-making lab. So we're at Big Island of Hawaii, right? If we go over to Maui and go to the airport, we can see this is the airport right here, right? There's actually a beautiful pond system right here, a natural reserve or a natural system here. And there actually are deer living in this area, access deer. And at times the deer have been known to basically go onto the runway here. It's very, very dangerous stuff. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. I want to show you a video of the deer. So basically the folks on Maui, they called up our lab and they're like, hey, will you come use your thermal technology to try and find these deer for us? We've been trying to find them in this pond system for a long time. We can't seem to. So you can see this is the drone flying. I'm driving about 100 feet maybe. I have my thermal camera on. So lighter colors are basically hotter things. And I think eventually we're going to see the deer. I'm not going to tell you where they are. Let's see if you guys can spot them on your own. You guys see these hot objects? We're coming in close. Eventually, you're actually going to see the buck's antlers itself. There it is. You guys see that buck right there? So again, this is from a drone. Is capturing this imagery here, and you can see I've found them. I've actually can count them. It looks like there's a baby deer, 2 mothers maybe, and a buck. And we're actually going to follow them around with the drone here. So this is really cool. This is like 3 in the morning, folks. So we can't. This is pitch black at night. So it's pretty incredible that we actually can see where we're flying with this technology, and not only that, we can kind of track these deer over time and where they're going. Theoretically, we even may potentially push these deer around. So if there was like a trap gate, or we wanted to get them out of the pond safely, we actually could push them potentially into like into a trap or into a fence line, that kind of idea, and remove them safely that way. Yeah, John, it really is high resolution. We're really lucky that it's amazing technology. Every day gets better, right? Thanks to cell phones, thanks to computers, that kind of idea. So yeah, this is pretty incredible high resolution imagery for thermal cameras. And you can see eventually they disappear off into that's kiave trees there. You guys know kiave? That's a giant thorny tree. So that's not safe for humans or drones even. So there's a great example of us using our drone to help count animals over in Maui. We've actually done the same thing with cattle. I'm going to show you where this is too. This is over on the Big Island. It's called Waipahoehoe. It's right next to the Hakalau National Refuge on Mauna Kea slopes. So again, here's Big Island, right? We're going to zoom in over to Mauna Kea. There's beautiful Mauna Kea right there. And we kind of go to this area, we can see this kind of half-degraded forest. We can see a really nice forest here and a half-degraded forest here. Basically, this kind of half-degraded forest is because there's lots of cattle in there. They're actually wild cattle that escape a ranch. They've been living here for a while. And they actually cause a lot of damage to the trees and such, as you can see in this image. I'll show you in a second. So again, here's where cattle are. Here's no cattle. You can see the difference, right? It's the same thing. The state asked us to go try and count cattle for them. So we actually, this is a camera attached to a helicopter, and we flew back and forth over this forest, trying to capture every second, or every inch that is of the forest. And you can see that we actually were able to count cows this way. This is with a normal camera. It's not a thermal camera, right? But eventually we're going to see some cattle very soon coming up here. Any second now. There they are. Do you guys see them? These cute little brown guys down here. Here's some more, right? So great. With this technology, we basically flew back and forth over this forest, captured every inch of ground with our camera, and from there we actually could estimate how many cows are in this forest. And it came out looking like this. This is a little complicated, but I'll explain it. You guys see these little faint blue lines? That's the path the helicopter took. So you can see the helicopter was trying really hard. Uh-oh. 1 second, everyone. Got a lot of windows here. Okay.
Doing great.
You can see that the helicopter was trying really hard to fly straight lines, but couldn't always do it. Basically, this is the path of the helicopter, and every purple circle you're seeing is when we saw cows, and the size of the purple circle is how many cows we saw in that moment. So you can see some things emerging here. One, you can see this kind of cows across the whole landscape, but there are kind of areas of concentration. Maybe over here on the left side, there's basically more cows than here on the right side. That'd be important for managers. Maybe they want to basically push all these cows out of here. It might be best to try to start pushing from the right side and push them left, because then you'll slowly accumulate them over time. Let's say you want to put traps in there. You want to trap in the most dense area of cows. You could try this left side. There's some good examples of what you could do with this map that we made. So basically, again, we made a map. We looked at it. We derived information from it. That's what we do at the lab here. What's some other things we do? Well, let's talk about maybe Honolulu. You guys know Honolulu Beach Park? I'm sure you do if you live in Ka'au. We have been flying this beach park. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's actually a house falling into the ocean there. I'm going to give you a little bit more background. So again, here we are, Google Maps, zooming out, Big Island. Here we go to Honolulu. You can see this. The cliff of Hilo is there's all these homes built right on the edge of the cliffs, right? Here we go. See this home right here? This is built right on the edge of the cliff, right? And this map is kind of cool. This is Google Earth map, right? It's a nice flat map. It's really good. But what if I wanted to see this in 3D? What if I wanted to see this look like an actual, not just straight down, but from the side? We can do that with our drones as well. So basically, I can take my drone, right? And I can fly along that coast. And I take a photo. These are all photos from a drone. Take lots and lots of photos of that cliffside. You can see that house is literally falling into the ocean, right? And you take all these photos and put them to a mapping program. So every red dot here is a photo I took. We zoom in here. We turn those photos. This is the same thing we just saw here, but from the side. Every green dot is a photo. You can see they're all pointed down. That was the direction the camera was pointing. And basically, we can take all those photos, throw them in this computer program, and it spits out a 3D model for us. We actually can spin the thing around and look at it. We can measure. There, that's a 3D model. Isn't that cool? We actually can measure things like the size of that house or how wide and long it is, not just from the top, but from the side angles here. And what we can do is actually can measure how much dirt is here on this cliff wall. And we can come back there maybe next month and do the exact same thing. Go back every single month and measure how much dirt is left on this cliff edge. And from there, we can estimate how quickly that cliff is eroding. This is kind of hard to tell, but let's see if we can do this together here. So this is that same house, right? And this is the elevation. So basically, the more the red colors, the higher the elevation. And the more blue-purple colors, the lower elevation. So here's one from June 2017, and then a few months later, October. Have you guys seen how this kind of thing is eroded here? For instance, this nice lip that used to be right here, that lip is gone, right? We measured that via using a drone, taking lots of photos, making a 3D model, and then measuring how much that model has changed over time. I think that's pretty incredible. And this is really important, right? Because I think here in Hawaii, we have a problem with too many homes being built too close to the ocean. And this is important information. If we can show the county or people in charge how quickly the earth is eroding near the ocean, those homes probably won't be built there anymore. Because basically, 20, 30, 40 years, these homes might be gone. And that's not good for anybody. Cool. So what are the things we do here at the lab? Well, let's talk about birds, maybe. This is over in Maui again. These are parakeets. They're ring-eyed parakeets. And they are invasive. They're known to kind of spread lots of seeds around and stuff. So here's us actually flying our thermal camera along a cliffside. This is on Maui again. So it's kind of hard to tell what's going on, but once you see this cow here, it'll make more sense. See that cow up there? That cow is on top of the ridge, or top of the cliff, and we're looking at the side of it. So this drone is flying along the side of the cliff, and we're looking for birds. Basically, these birds nest in cliff sides. So they're really hard to find. If you're trying to track them to their home and get a hold of them, How do you do that? It's basically an ocean under this cliff here. And you guys see those birds? There they are. They're flying by right there. So it's pretty incredible. Not only can this thermal camera pick up, big things like cows and deers, but actually can pick up really small things like birds flying through the air. And this is a great technology for helping you kind of, find a bird's nest if you want to, so you can safely remove it out of that area. All right. I think I have just one more thermal camera thing here. Maybe you guys are getting sick of thermal cameras, but I think they're really cool. Tide pools. So we can say tide pools. This is a study we did over on the Kona side of the Big Island. So we're going to zoom out. Here we are taking our tour of the Big Island still. We're going from Hilo all the way to Keauhou. Let's see if I can find Keauhou real fast. Here's Keauhou. So this is Keauhou Beach Resort. And over here, all these really important tide pools. This is Kahalu'u Beach Park. I think folks have been there, but I spent a lot of time there growing up at Kahalu'u Beach Park. You can see it's a really beautiful beach, and it has tons of coral reef here, all just offshore. You can see this. And there's actually some ʻŌhiʻa out there actually restoring. A hotel was knocked down that used to be here, and they're restoring all these ancient ʻŌhiʻa. It's a really incredible story. So basically, people running this area want to understand more about the history and the cultural kind of side of what's going on here. So tide pools are a great way to tell those stories. If we look at this video here, we're going to see us fly. This is us flying at nighttime again over those same tide pools. And what's really cool is, one of the cool things about Kona and Hawaii in general is we have a mixture of fresh water and salt water. Like a fish pond, for instance, is brackish water, right? It's kind of half ocean, half fresh. So ocean water is usually warmer than fresh water because fresh water is coming down from the mountain, which is often colder. So we can see here when we're looking at the water itself, we actually can see temperatures in the water. You guys kind of see this darker area over here? That's more fresh water. And this lighter area, that's more seawater. So you can see literally not only where it's mixing, but you actually can try and find the freshwater inputs. And this is really important because there's histories of, Hawaiians going to gather fresh water from tide pools, putting the gourd, for instance, in the right place just to catch that right amount of fresh water. And you can kind of see that with these flights here. We can see where the fresh water might be pouring into the ocean. Maybe right here, for instance, you can see is a really kind of cold spot. That's really cool because that's linking kind of ancient stories, ancient cultural activities with kind of modern day technology. We can kind of reinforce or kind of confirm people's already had, previously held thoughts. I think it's pretty incredible stuff. And there's one of the ʻŌhiʻas right there that we're storing. But yep, again, you can see all this freshwater mixing. Here's a warm kind of spot, but here's a real cold spot up here. So again, the same kind of idea. We actually can, with this technology, we actually can maybe guess, or educated guess-wise, where fresh water might be coming into the system. All right, cool. Let's keep going here. I think that's the last of the thermal cameras. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Something we do is invasive plants. I think someone mentioned earlier that drones can help find plants, and that's a great point. It's one of my favorite things about them. So here's an example of one. Have you guys ever heard of Myconia? Feel free to yell if you've heard about Myconia before. All right, it's a mystery plant. Well, Myconia is actually one of the world's worst invasive species of plants. People call it the Tahitian cancer. It tends just to grow really, really fast and take over, almost destroy Tahiti, they say. It has really not very good roots. So once it takes over a forest, all the dirt that mostly the old trees were holding down washes away. It can destroy a whole island. So there is Myconia on the Big Island. But it's actually not that, it's not everywhere. It's only in certain places. And if you can find the first time the plant shows up somewhere and get rid of that plant, you can kind of prevent that plant from taking over, kind of stop the invasion in some ways. But of course, like forests are crazy, right? So look at this forest here. This is a beautiful forest. It's called Vaukele. It's kind of near you guys, actually. It's between Puna and Volcano, pretty much. But this is from a drone, right? And as you can see, there's so many trees here. What do? How does a person search this entire forest looking for a few trees? Well, we can use a drone to help us, right? So again, do you guys see this plant anywhere in this photo? I sure don't. I'll give you a clue. It's somewhere in there. Let's zoom in. We're going to zoom in here. You guys see the plant yet? I'll give you a few seconds.
I think
Give you
I
a clue. Looks like that.
little tiny leaves.
Yeah. But so you can see it has some unique characteristics, right? We look for this kind of thing. It has this really strong white midvein. So that's a good clue for trying to find it. Do I see this big white midvein here? And it has really unique shaped leaves, right? They're kind of like these big oval leaves. So let's see. It's right there. Do you guys see that one? I often lose it, so don't worry if you can find
I was looking at the wrong one.
it. But you can see this is a great tool, right? We basically captured a huge section of forest with our drone, and we actually were able to find one plant. Now, I think we found this poor plant. Actually, I think a student was sitting down and went through all these photos and actually found that by themselves. But the future of this kind of work is actually not a human being doing this, but a computer doing this for us. You can use things called computer algorithms or machine learning. You can basically teach a machine to look for certain things. And you can teach them, for instance, to look for this kind of plant. Again, like John said, it's got these really weird leaves, but they're pretty unique in the environment, right? They don't look like a pu'u. Here's a pu'u. They don't look like grass. They don't look like ʻŌhiʻa or strawberry guava. They look only much like myconia, pretty much. So you can feed a computer program tons and tons of photos of myconia, and the computer actually can learn what myconia looks like. And then what that computer can do for you is you can give that software a giant picture just like this, and say, hey, look at this whole photo for me. Find leaves that look like this, and it will do it for you. It's actually pretty incredible. We're doing this now for a few things. We've tried for myconia. We're trying for rapid ʻŌhiʻa death, which I'll get to in a second. Yeah, it is incredible, Rebecca. Just think of the time saving, right? Like my eyes would bleed. They'd be on fire and bleeding if I had to look at 1,000 images trying to find a tiny little plant. But I can feed 1,000 images to a computer, and it can do that. It doesn't have eyes. They don't bleed. That kind of whole thing. They can basically go through there and find small objects for me pretty well. And that's a huge tool that can apply not only for Hawaii but worldwide. Because again, myconia is a worldwide problem. Computer vision. I agree. So I think someone said forest disease or forest health, and that was really right on the money. Because yes, the main thing that I do in this lab is I study rapid ʻŌhiʻa death. Have you guys learned about rapid ʻŌhiʻa death at all?
We're getting some nods, yeah.
Great. Yeah, it's a terrible, terrible thing, right? ʻŌhiʻa is one of the most important things we have in Hawaii, at least in my opinion. They say, in Hawaii, our forests are really, really special and really unique. Nowhere else in the world is there ʻŌhiʻa. Nowhere else in the world does there have pu'u. These things are endemic to Hawaii. And our forests, because of that, are really special places. ʻŌhiʻa trees, they say, make up about 80 to 70% of all the native biomass of trees in Hawaii. If you were to weigh every single plant in Hawaii that was native, about 70 to 80% of all that weight would be ʻŌhiʻa. So you can see it's a really important tree. Yeah, you guys know that word, endemic, I hope, right? So endemic, what does that mean? It means that thing is actually evolved in Hawaii. It may have come here different, but it changed to be unique to only Hawaii. So things like ʻŌhiʻa are endemic because they came from somewhere else. But after being in Hawaii for a while, they changed and became a unique thing. Kind of like how the Polynesians came to Hawaii and became Hawaiians. Hawaiians are endemic to Hawaii, right? Because they became a unique Hawaiian culture here, but they came from somewhere else. That's a good word to know. But anyway, so yeah, unfortunately, ʻŌhiʻa is crazy important to the Hawaiian forests, but it is sick. There's a disease called rapid ʻŌhiʻa death, kind of destroying our forests, unfortunately. And drones are a great tool to kind of track those changes over time. So here's a drone photo again of a forest. And you guys can see it looks, I don't know if you guys have ever been to the mainland, but it kind of looks like autumn or fall, right? It looks like these trees have it's like Halloween or something maybe. Unfortunately, that's not what's happening. This isn't autumn colors. These are trees actually dying. You can see that it's actually a progression over time. So I have this green circle, that's a living, happy ʻŌhiʻa tree. Great. But eventually, once these trees start getting sick from rot, there's a natural progression over time we can track. So again, they start off green and happy. Then they start getting kind of yellow, kind of kind of sickish. Then they go to a kind of a deep, rich red, and then kind of like a tan brown, and eventually a white. We call this kind of the disease rainbow in some ways, right? And this is a really good photo because you actually can see every stage of the tree dying, unfortunately, in one photo itself. And so what's happening? Why are these trees dying here? Well, it's a fungus. Rapidohea is caused by a fungus, and that fungus lives inside the tree. And more importantly, it lives inside the tree's veins, called the xylem. That's the tree basically drinks water from the ground. So if those veins get clogged by the fungus, which is what happens with rod, that tree can't drink water anymore. So basically what you're seeing here is kind of a tree's dying of dehydration or thirst. It's pretty tragic. But here are those 4 stages, right? We kind of call chlorotic or yellow, red, brown, and bleached. And we can see this happening over and over again in different parts of the island. So here's a different map. This is down in Ka'u. And what we can do is we actually can fly sites over and over and over again and track changes. So again, see these trees here? They're yellow, right? Here's some red ones. Here's some brown ones. And here's some gray ones, right? So all those ones I just showed you. What we can do is actually can see how they change over time. So we can see these yellow trees. They were yellow trees in 2017 November, right? But a few months later, 2 months later, those same exact trees were red. So you can see they're yellow here and a red here. And these are different maps, right? So I went out there and I flew my drone and I made a map in November 2017. And I went out there and flew my drone again and made another map in 2018. And I laid those maps on top of one another, kind of like a flip book, right? And I can go back and forth and back and forth. And these maps are so lined up that the trees are in the same place they were before. So actually you can basically track the health of a tree over time. Same thing here, right? 2017, here were some red trees. 2 months later, those trees that were red are now brown. So this is how I know that trees go from green to yellow to red to brown. It's like I can see it happening over time with time series maps. So that's pretty tragic stuff. Let's see. So what can this time series do for us, right? Well, let's think about this. With the time series map, we actually can track changes over time. We can quantify. That is, I can see a forest, and I can tell you that forest is sick. But if I wanted to actually measure and count it, I could quantify how sick that forest is. So here's a forest down in Ka'u, and this is 2010, right? This is before Rod showed up. And this is a healthy forest. Basically, I've broken the forest into little tiny cells. They're 10 by 10 meter cells, or 30 by 30 feet. Maybe the size of a house, a small house. And every cell I've said this cell is either, how sick is this cell? How sick is this poor section of land? If every tree, 80 to 100% trees in that cell, that little area, are sick or dying, it becomes red. If there's no to 20% trees are not dying, then it's a healthy cell. Basically, this we can track over time what happens. So here's 2010, right? Most of the forest is happy and healthy, green. But here's 2015, right? You can see all of a sudden, this is probably after Rod arrived here at this forest. A lot of these happy cells and healthy cells have gone from being, no mortality to a decent amount of mortality. And then over time, we can see the accumulation of mortality in this forest. Now, this is really sad stuff, right? But this is also really important because we can show people who are important. Let's say the governor or the people in charge of the forest in Hawaii. We can show them, hey, this is the rate of death in your forest. This is how quickly the trees are dying here. So you can see this 2010, 2018. We've gone from 97% of the forest was happy to only 70% was happy and healthy. That's a huge change in only 8 years. And with that, you can kind of estimate, how long a forest kind of has to live. Not to make this sad, but you guys have probably seen the same kind of thing with COVID, right? Let's see. 1 second, everyone. So these are called mortality curves. It's kind of like I just showed you, but a different way. So again, this is 2010. This is a different forest, but same idea. you can see the mortality of the forest is pretty low, only like 2.5%, 2%. But over time, once rod probably hits somewhere around here, we can see that the forest mortality really ramped up. And then it's kind of holding a steady trajectory. It's kind of the same direction, that line. And what you can do is you can literally just draw a line kind of, paralleling the slope of this line. So match that line's slope and then take it all the way to 100%. And from there, you can kind of estimate how long it'd be until the whole forest is dead from rod. And unfortunately, that could be like 20, 30 years. We don't know that's going to happen, right? But all we know is what's happened in the past. What's happening right now. But from the past to now, we can see there's clearly a direction of this disease going up. I don't know if you guys remember that term. They kept saying flatten the curve during COVID. That's kind of saying, hey, these cases are ramping up. We need to stop that. We need to flatten the curve, make these cases stop. And we wish we could do the exact same thing for rod here. We wish we could flatten this kind of curve. But unfortunately, we don't have that opportunity right now. Okay, so I'm going to get back to you. So what other things can we do? So with that drone technology, we basically measure changes in the forest over time, which is huge. Other things we can do is we actually can find outbreaks. The big island of Hawaii has a pretty bad rod infestation, but the other islands aren't so bad yet, right? There's only a few trees there. And so drones are great because not only can they find the trees for us, but we can do it right away. Let's say if you wanted to use a plane or a satellite to go find, or even a helicopter to go find these things for us. Let's say a plane or a satellite. It might take time to get that plane ready. It might take time to move that satellite over Hawaii Island. But with this type of copter imaging, both with drones and I'm going to show you in a second helicopters, you can quickly map a whole forest. So here's an example. Back in 2019, they kind of discovered a rod tree in Oahu, right? They kind of freaked out. Like, oh my God, we have a rod tree. What are we going to do? So they flew us over there, and the same thing we did with the drone, we did with the helicopter. We kind of flew back and forth with the landscape. We actually were able to map, 29,000 acres with this technology in the course of a few days. And with that, we actually found some suspect trees. We took 40,000 images, photos, right, for 30,000 acres, and went through every single photo and tried to find trees that look like rod, or look like they're dying from rod. And then we gave those points to the state on Oahu, and we're like, hey, here's some trees. Go check them out. Maybe go sample these trees. These might be additional rod trees you have on your island. And that kind of quick, rapid turnaround is kind of unprecedented, I'd argue. It's really exciting for kind of rapid response to outbreaks. If we get back to that Myconi, remember that Myconi tree I showed you, that little tiny thing in the forest, and how the computer maybe can help us find Myconia? It's the same thing for rod here. Maybe we could train a computer to go through these 40,000 photos for us and find trees just like this. So here's some examples of trees on Oahu that we found from our flight. And if we could train a computer to look through every single photo we take and to try and find trees that look like this, because this is unique, right? We often see trees in Hawaii this kind of bright red color here. If we're on the mainland during fall, we would, but not in Hawaii. We don't have fall in Hawaii. So kind of looking for this kind of, characteristic is really cool. We call it a novel characteristic, as in a new or kind of unprecedented characteristic. The computer program can help us find those kind of things. And I think that's pretty incredible stuff. So, eventually maybe we can go fly, 4 days in Oahu and get through 40,000 images, but much, much faster without me burning my eyes apart. Okay. And let's see what I have for you guys here. I think that kind of covers the majority of the rod work I have. Do you guys have any questions about rod or anything?
Getting some head shakes, no.
No, because if I heard about rod a lot, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, at that point, that's kind of I guess I went through kind of faster. I'm sorry, but general questions from the kids at all?
What do you guys think? What's that?
What do you have for dinner 3 days ago?
Emily wants to know what you had for dinner 3 days ago.
3 days ago. That was Friday.
You don't have to answer.
I think I had a spicy chicken boca burger.
Wow.
It's some like old broccoli my wife made. It was delicious.
Can I ask this, what are you guys currently studying? What are the things you guys are working on right now?
Ooh. Chemical reactions. We're in the lab studying enzymes, studying catalase and how it breaks down hydrogen peroxide and yeah, I've been in the lab a lot lately. Doing kind of catching up on labs we weren't able to do while we were online. But yeah. So kind of more microbiology stuff right now.
Okay, very good. And but part of your lessons have been talking about sort of ecology and or sort of biological.
Yeah, absolutely. And the stuff that we did with teaching change last semester, we talked about that. Yeah.
Right on. Well, it certainly is a great opportunity for us to, talk to some students there. And, hopefully you guys got excited about some of the things that Timo showed. I think he's a good speaker and showed you guys some really cool images. There's a question that just came in about interested in pursuing a career in conservation. For me, growing up on the mainland, I was always, really interested in hiking and camping and being in the forest and sort of, thinking about wanting to help protect those resources. And my background is I have an undergraduate degree in physics and geology, and then I have a master's degree and a doctorate or a PhD in geography. And Timo could maybe chime in about what made him interested in pursuing a career in conservation.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Gosh, what was it? Let's see. Well, my dad was a fisherman, so I kind of, growing up, I kind of felt that the land was really provided for me and my family, and I always kind of felt guilty. I was a sensitive kid, so I always felt kind of guilty of this fish dying around me. So sometimes I say I'm a conservationist to make up for kind of what raised me, which is the land. The other thing might be I moved to New York City in my 20s, in my undergrad, and just really it wasn't until then that I realized how gosh darn special Hawaii is. You kids, you probably grew up in Hawaii too, and I remember growing up in Hawaii and not really realizing how lucky and special the place I grew up was. So sometimes leaving and coming back and really just really slap you in the face about what a special place is. And regarding what's advice for your dream career? Well, education really is a great gateway to your dreams. It's kind of the most cliche thing you hear sometimes, but it really is true. I currently have an amazing job working for Ryan and studying the things I care about because I was able to get a good education. And that's both through me being lucky enough to have that kind of opportunity, but also just working really hard and trying that. And it's never too late to go back, Blair. A great point from my life is my undergrad's in literature, but my master's is in science. So it's you can kind of there's many paths to succeeding in this kind of world. And so that's something I think of, really going back to school, getting my master's degree really did help me in my career. So, and it wasn't too late, even though I thought maybe I'd gone down the wrong path, school-wise, that is. So yeah, basically just feeling really lucky I grew up in Hawaii and getting a good education was kind of a great way I got here where I am now.
Thanks. We got some questions here too.
Good.
One at a time. Yeah, go ahead, Emma.
Have we ever seen something like Rappalohia death before?
You guys hear that?
No, can you repeat it, John?
Oh yeah, she was asking if we ever seen anything like Rappalohia death before.
Gosh, go ahead, Ryan. Yeah.
Yes, so that's a really great question. So there was actually something called ʻŌhiʻa dieback that happened on our island back in the 1970s and 1980s. And so there was a lot of swaths of ʻŌhiʻa trees died during that time. And in fact, if you drive on the Saddle Road leaving Hilo over to Kona, you can see some old trees that are dead. Some of those were from that past event. And so ʻŌhiʻa trees also can die like around areas which are active with volcanic eruptions. We're watching this video from Timo, so there's too much gas or too much heat, that can also kill ʻŌhiʻa. And ʻŌhiʻa can also just die for, all kinds of different reasons. But what's happening now with rapid ʻŌhiʻa death seems to be different. So there's a fungal pathogen, an introduced fungal pathogen, which is coming in, and it has a name now, has a Hawaiian name, Ceratocystis leuco-ʻŌhiʻa. There's another one, Julio ʻŌhiʻa, but the one that seems to be most problematic is called Ceratocystis leuco-ʻŌhiʻa. And particular varieties of our ʻŌhiʻa trees are really susceptible to this pathogen if they are wounded. So if they have a broken branch, or if an animal strips their bark, or if someone comes along with a car or a bulldozer or something and breaks a branch, then there's an opening for the fungal pathogen to get in. And so this is a new pathogen, we think, that's here on our island. Maybe it was brought in through a nursery or through meaning like a plant. Somebody imported some plants or something, and that plant happened to have the pathogen on it, and then it started to spread. So this is a new thing that is happening to our ʻŌhiʻa trees, unfortunately. But there have been things in the past where ʻŌhiʻa have died as well. But it seems like those were from different mechanisms than what's happening now.
Cool, thank you.
Any other questions?
They're thinking about it. But that's a great question of Blair. What are some things they can do in their day-to-day life to support conservation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So certainly, one of the things that families can do on sort of the family basis is think about your consumption patterns. And are you buying things that have a lot of packaging and you're creating a lot of trash? And unfortunately, sometimes people will be taking their trash to the dump, but things fall out of the pickup truck, and then there's trash everywhere, and then that ends up into the ocean. And so, Hono and turtles and all kinds of things consume that, and that's problematic. And so the more that your families and you guys can do to try to limit the amount of waste you generate, and certainly anytime we drive a regular car, you're releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, right? And so those are just, you got to get places, but those are things to consider. So if there's things that you can do on your day-to-day life to support conservation and take care of the land, could be thinking about, don't generate rubbish, or try to limit as much rubbish as you can generate. And if you do need to drive around to go run errands and things, if you could maybe combine those trips. So instead of having 6 different trips, if you made 2 trips and tried to do multiple things, just to try to limit the amount of energy you're using, and the amount of, really, for driving with regular cars, the amount of carbon dioxide you're releasing, because all that stuff, it adds up, and it's having bad impacts for our environment, and specifically here in Hawaii for our really beautiful honey creeper songbirds. Those birds are dying. They're going extinct right now because of global warming. It's getting warmer, and that's causing mosquitoes to move up into their habitat, and the birds are getting avian malaria from the mosquitoes and dying, and that's because it's getting warmer. And so anytime we drive a car, we're contributing to that getting warmer. So those types of things, if we can sort of minimize those as much as possible. Those are a couple things. Timo may have other ideas.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, it's a very long. I mean, yeah, it's almost endless what you can do. But I guess one thing that this might not seem that important, but to me, I think it really is. It's kind of mindsets. It's like actually learning the names of the things around you. Here in Hawaii, we drive past thousands of trees and plants and animals every single day, but we often don't know what the name of them is. And I think it's a really important kind of step for the mindset, just to even learn the basic plant names around you. I find that the minute you know someone's name, you often treat it with a lot more respect. You almost understand it more. You kind of realize it's there. And so, yeah, if you guys have people in your life that know the Hawaiian plant names around you, or at least the animals, ask them to teach you. I think you'd be shocked to learn what kind of force is around you once you start picking away at one at a time. And then, so Blair, great question. One of my least favorite things about the job. Well, my favorite thing about the job is I get to help the island. That's really incredible. You know, rapid heat up is a huge problem for the island, and it can feel overwhelming. And just the small work I'm able to do actually at least let me feel like I'm trying to make a difference, and that's really important. The double-edged sword of that is it can be really, really sad. That's my least favorite thing about the job. Sometimes I say I study death in high resolution. And you know, visiting the same forest every single month and seeing how that forest is getting sicker and sicker, that can take a toll on your mental health, and that can be really hard. So it's a double-edged sword of I get to work and try and protect things I care about, but I also get to watch the things I care about deal with life as they go along.
And then that question there is from Roland, asking what else you use drones for, and what other equipment do you use, and why?
Yeah, I can answer a little bit about that. So one of the really cool things we're working on recently is using a drone to actually collect a branch sample from a tree. So sometimes there are trees that are too difficult for us to access on the ground because they are behind lava flows, or it's just really hard to get to those trees. And to determine if a tree is dying because of the fungal pathogens responsible for rapid ʻŌhiʻa death, you can look at the tree and you can think, I think that tree might have the pathogen, but the only way to really know is to take a sample and then have the laboratory test that. But sometimes it's really hard to get access to those trees, and even from helicopter or other things, it's really dangerous to get to the tree. And there are some trees on Kauai, for example, on the island of Kauai, where we've identified those trees as we think that's probably a rapid ʻŌhiʻa death tree, but they aren't able to get to that tree because it's too isolated. So what my lab has been working on is we're making a drone attachment, which has a little grabber arm and it has a saw, and basically the drone close, Tim was showing this, get the drone close to the tree, and then it's going to grab onto the tree and cut the branch, and then it's going to take the branch back so that you can then bring that to the lab and get that tested. And so that's something that you could use drones for when it's too dangerous or you know, problematic for you to get to that tree in person. And so yeah, this video will play for a little bit. And I don't know if you know when it actually makes the cut, Timo, but you could advance to that.
No, I don't. It might not ever in this one.
Okay. And so anyway, this is kind of an experimental prototype we're working on, and we have to work with the Federal Aviation Administration to get, you know, permissions and work with all that stuff, because drones can be dangerous. This is an important point. Drones can fall out of the sky. And they can, you know, fall on your head, and they've got rotors that can cut things. But this is a picture of, so we were able to grab that branch, and then we're bringing it back and then test that to the lab. And so, yeah, so that's one thing that we use drones for. During the lava eruption, we also, or other folks were using drones, and they had sort of air quality sensors mounted on the drone so that the drone could fly through the landscape and measure the amount of gas that's being, you know, so is it safe for people to be there? You send a drone in, and the drone can determine if it's safe or not, and then you could send in your emergency crews. Because if the drone goes in, the drone's not going to pass out if the, you know, SO2 levels are too high, but a person might. So you could use drones to figure things out like that. So there's all kinds of things. If the work is really dangerous or dirty or really tedious, you can kind of send drones in, and they can help you determine what the right course of action is. So there's lots of ways you could use drones to do different things. And certainly, Timo showed the thermal cameras, and that's a really cool, but there's other kinds of sensors you can put on drones. We were having one project maybe with some people who are interested in the coqui frogs or bats or birds, where you could kind of put microphones on the drone, and then you could use that to do kind of like sound mapping of the landscape. So, you know, it's really whatever your mind can come up with. The drone is a vehicle for, you know, making measurements, and you could use a drone to sample water. So some people have drones and they've got little floats on the bottom, and you can land the drone in the water and collect water. For the lake, which was up at the summit, the USGS, and we were working with them to get them up and running and started, but they created a water collection system from a drone where it would collect water from that lake that was there up at the summit briefly. And well, not Lake Waiʻau. So Lake Waiʻau, nobody should be sampling that lake. The lake I'm referring to was at the Kilauea summit. And so before Kilauea and the Halemaʻumaʻu crater started to erupt again, there was a lake that was there temporarily. It's beautiful. It's this beautiful lake. And the USGS wanted to understand if they sample the water, if the chemistry of the water, and this is relating to your chemistry labs, if the water chemistry of that lake could tell us something about when it might erupt again. So they started to take samples, then it started to erupt again, and the lake all sort of dried out. But that's another application. So, but no sampling should happen at Lake Waiʻau. So that's at least without a whole lot of consultation and communication with folks.
Man, that was so cool. Thank you guys so much.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, I had some questions too. I was really curious about computer vision stuff and AI, machine learning. Looking at the cow counting, I was like, man, that's got to be a lot of analysis time. But you kind of answered that you're looking into it. I was interested. Like, do you guys actually hand fly the drones, or are they autonomous? And have you like thought about like swarms of drones at some point, or like having them like actually fly missions completely autonomously? Oh, and Harley just threw one in there. What's the hardest thing you had to record? Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
I'll let Timo talk about the flight, autonomous or not, and I'll think about the hardest thing we had to record.
Yeah, I'm thinking too. Yeah, but often the drone, I say I'm a babysitter, John. The drone flies itself. Given that we're doing mapping a lot of time, and the mapping you want to cover every inch of the ground, it's often better just let the drone kind of design its own flight plan and kind of do a very systematic back and forth kind of coverage. We call it like flying a lawnmower. Like the lawnmower goes back and forth and back and forth. Yeah, and that's usually the main flight reason. But I guess the Harley, that's a great question, man. We've flown some crazy stuff. The volcano was pretty like this flight you're watching right here is pretty crazy because you can see we're flying right over it, looking straight down into it. So all that smoke, all that crazy kind of byproduct of the emissions is kind of going up into the drone, messing with the communication. The video looks great here, but what I'm seeing as a pilot is I'm seeing the feed kind of, I'm seeing like the static, I'm hearing noises, I'm seeing it cut in and out just because of all that the obstacles in the air from all the heavy metals and such being released. So that was pretty hard. How about you, Ryan?
Well, one of the things we really want to measure but haven't really been able to yet is trying to measure really, really small changes in the landscape. So really little, erosion or things like that, and trying to measure things that are, less than, 5 centimeters worth of change or such. And so we've been working on that for quite some time with LiDAR and some other things, and still haven't been able to do it as much as I want us to be able to. So that's kind of a hard thing. And then this last question, then we got to wrap it up. So we have lost a drone while flying. We lost a drone during the lava eruption, and we've lost a small handful of drones on other flight operations because of failures and communication issues. So that's definitely something that is part of the deal, and you just need to be aware of that and be real safe in how you do things, because the last thing you want is a drone that hit any person. And in terms of how much the drones cost, it depends. They can range anywhere from a couple $100s up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. So oftentimes the sensors are more expensive at this point now than the drones are, but it depends. I think that's about it for our time. So thank you guys very much, and hopefully you've inspired to come to Hilo, study geography and environmental science. It's the best major there is, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the day.
Thank you guys so much. That was awesome.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Yay! They're all super
Yay.
great. So much. That was an excellent presentation. You guys nailed it. That was so cool.
All right. You guys have a great
Thanks,
day.
John.
Aloha.
Have a great day, everyone. Yeah, aloha.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank